closing session right now. We're going to close out this space. For this, I invite Swetha Balakrishnan, who leads the fellowship recruitment team at Teach for India. She first joined the Teach for India Fellowship in 2012 and taught grades 3 and 4 in a government school in Pune. After which she worked with Teach for India in different capacities like a program manager, chief of staff for a couple of years. Currently, she works as a fellowship recruitment team director. Swetha, welcome to this session. Over to you.
Thank you, Ellie. What a privilege it is to be amongst everyone here today and such incredible educators who I think in so many ways have reinforced the importance of going beyond the basics. So I have this daunting task of trying to bring all of those wonderful learnings together. I think when I think of the many sessions we went through over the course of this evening, a word that's constantly reinforced has been the idea of integration. Each educator reinforcing that there is no option for us today but to go beyond the basics. As I try and summarize our day today, I invite each of you over to our comments box to also share what is something that you are taking away from that specific session or a practice that you intend to implement when you go back to your schools, your classrooms, back to your students. We started our evening with a keynote with Dr. Rishikesh, who talked to us about how when foundational skills are lost, one stops learning. He talked about the importance of reimagining the curriculum and said that at this point, we need to make choices within our curriculum. And two core questions to hold in mind are, what are the aims of education at a macro level? What are the objectives of what I am teaching today at a micro level? And the need to balance those core essential skills with the basics, because 2 years through this pandemic, children have lost so much. And so we've just got to keep doing that. He talked about the importance of formative assessments and said maybe we could even do away with the board exams, but how school education reform needs to go hand in hand with higher and tertiary education reform, because what we value needs to remain consistent through our entire education system. We then heard from Archana Chandra, who talked about embracing all towards equity and how it's so important to include children with disabilities in the narrative. We heard 3 beautiful stories. Huzaifa, who went from Talegaon to Dubai, who unlocked sports for himself and began paying it forward to other children like himself. We heard about Akshay, who's today earning independent, a contributing member of society, and from Vihan, who said, hey, there's nothing to be afraid of if there's a child with Down syndrome in your home. You never know, because that child can surprise you. More than anything, I think we heard about resilience, the unconditional love, equality, expression, the different abilities that children with disabilities come with, and to treat them like we'd want to treat anyone else, including ourselves. We went on to hear from Saurabh, Taneja, Liana, and Shubhra on foundational literacy and numeracy. Interestingly here, as we heard them talk about foundational literacy and numeracy, I heard them talk about how it builds confidence and critical thinking in children, and a teacher needs to be thinking about skills alongside content. So while a lot of our other speakers talked about bringing in different skills into a traditional schooling system, we heard these 2 speakers talk about skills being integrated into content knowledge as well, and how the pandemic demands for a spirit of collaboration to come back so that teachers can learn from one another, have those best practices that they can use to really overcome the setbacks of these past 2 years. We heard from Vikramjit about his work with children in conflict areas and the use of art, image theater, circles of trust as an entry point into one's mind. He talked about how it helps them express the unsaid, because sometimes it's not words that they can even talk about. It removes the stress. It enables more focus to come in, but to more than anything, gain an insight into oneself and into one's subconscious. He talked about how school truly is a space for care, a space for safety for these children, and the role of a teacher in really consciously creating that for children. We heard from Nemo, who talked to us about the arts, and interestingly, he said, while arts is a medium in itself, it enables teachers to build relationships with children, to teach them to connect with themselves, with others, to express kindness, to imbibe discipline, and so many other values. And what I really loved was from the arts to the heart, and a way to plant seeds in the most fertile soil at a phase in life when there's so much absorption that happens into a child's mind. And finally, we heard from Dr. Abhijit Barse, who talked about the play deficit in India, where sometimes even our school grounds are hardly used for what they were intended to be. And how play fosters excellence, it opens the mind, and within every game, there are sticky moments that can really leave a child with lifelong lessons of values, of discipline, to pick oneself up even in moments of failure. I hope each of you is thinking about what you're taking away to your own practice as an educator. But at this point, I want to pause and I want to introduce someone that I had the privilege of meeting over a decade ago. Her name is Khushi. She was a third grader in a government school where I had the opportunity to teach. And Khushi was a child who from the very get-go had a little spark in her eyes. She had a little bounce in her feet. And when there was a little bit of music or an opportunity to dance, she was ready to not just do it herself, but grab every person in the class and take them along as well. When Khushi entered fourth grade, she had the opportunity to be a part of a musical, and a few educators who took her along in that journey of exploring dance, theater, the performing arts. I'm actually going to invite Khushi to talk to us about the role that this played in her journey. This played in helping her go beyond the basics. And she's going to talk us through what the past decade has been like for her. So Khushi, without any further ado, over to you, but prompt me when to switch your slides and I'll do that.
Hi. Okay. I am going to share a very important part of my life. But before that, a very important quote that I really believe in, and that is, Didi? Yes. So by the end of this 2 minutes, I believe that you will start believing this little quote, this very simple quote. Gifts aren't to be paid back, they are meant to be paid forward. So I want to share with you the journey of that has played a very important part of my life. Over the past 10 years, I was a part of Maya, which was a Broadway musical initiated by Teach for India and A-Step, and Niba Bhai has talked about it, and Swetha Didi has already talked about it as well. The play talked about, shared the message of finding your true potential. Yeah. So this has all been it. After that, we also performed a play called The Greatest Show on Earth, which talks about the devastating truth about the education system through the metaphor of a circus. And the other one, the last thing, of course, KER, which played a very important part in my life in really shifting the way or the kind of education I strongly believe in now. So I'm here to talk about, not about the final performances that we put over here that you can see, but about all the several years and all those little moments that really shaped me into who I am today. And the biggest learning that I'm taking back are not the people that you see over here, but the people behind it. The people I looked up to as a child and constantly felt inspired and loved and confident about who I was and what I was going to do. Yes. And then I want to take you 10 years later to today. I'm a musician and artist. Part of my work is I make music for myself and for others, and I teach kids. And I'm a part of a very powerful startup called Burntune, where we emphasize on teaching struggling musicians the language of music by revolutionizing the way music is taught by a very special technique called the dark hearing. And the only aim is that we make these people into self-taught musicians, songwriters, artists, and creators. So I have a very special video. It's a part of my class and a part of my regular class. Yes, and let's go. Okay, so we learned the second pattern, which is something like, Ruhan, can you tell us?
1, 3, 4.
Clap it.
1, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4.
Perfecto. Amazing. Now, Ria is going to play the bass line for us on that rhythm pattern. Can you do that, Ria?
1, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4.
Amazing. You already sound like a rock star. 1, 3, 4. Amazing. Okay, Rohan, let's hear you. The right hand and the left hand. Go slow. Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Okay, that was my class. And let's switch to the next slide. So, introducing you the future stars. These are all my little kids. And all of these kids have a very, very special story to tell through music. And something that I really forgot to add over here is a beautiful project that we're working on. It's called the Conference of the Birds, which we are working on with 30 kids from the Lohia Nagar community from Pune to creating another larger than life musical just like Maya. Yes, and that's my story. And the only thing that I hope I was able to share my message across. Only thing I want to say is that the kind of experience a child gets when they are little, the kind of kids become what they experience and feel as a child. And I was privileged to be taught by really beautiful human beings and people who really strengthened my skills, as well as rooted the kind of values in me that give me a purpose of what I want to do in life and who I want to become. And that's my journey. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Khushi. To think that Khushi is a high schooler today, who, based on what she was able to gain through her own education, her education beyond the textbooks, beyond the basics, through the arts with her educators, has sort of paved that path for her to do it for so many more children at such an early junction is something that I'm thinking about, just enabling someone to find true passion and purpose in their life and also be, I think, fairly financially independent so early and make some very important choices. Thank you, Khushi, for walking us through your journey. A big thank you to our educators who joined us today, both as speakers as well as our audience members. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow as well. It's our last and final day for inspirED 2022, where we're going to talk about the role of you and I in rebuilding the system. We have a lovely lineup with speakers, starting with Prakash Chand alongside Tanya Arora. We're going to talk about the power of proclamation, the role of leadership for the marginalized. We're going to talk about the stepping stone with Shaheen Mistry, Anurag Pratap, Namita Hegde, and Baby Naikar. And we're going to close out with Sandeep Rai talking to us about the Teach for India roadmap. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Have a good evening, and thank you very much.